The plate was still warm in Emily's hands when the man's voice cut through the restaurant like a knife. "Are you kidding me right now?" Every head at every table turned. Emily froze mid-step, the tray trembling slightly against her palm. She looked down at the dish. Pan-seared salmon, exactly as ordered. Exactly as the ticket said. "Sir, I can check with the kitchen if something's—" "I didn't ask for a lecture. I asked for what I paid for." His voice rose again, sharper this time, aimed to embarrass, not to inform. He shoved the plate an inch across the white tablecloth, hard enough that the fork clattered to the floor. Wine sloshed dangerously close to the rim of his glass. A woman 2 tables over gasped and covered her mouth. Emily bent down to pick up the fork. Her hands were shaking now. "Leave it," he snapped. "Just get me someone who actually knows how to run a kitchen." She stood back up slowly. Her name tag caught the light. Emily. Her eyes were wet, but she refused to let the tears fall. Not here. Not in front of 40 people who had suddenly stopped eating to watch a grown man tear apart a 24-year-old waitress over a plate of fish. She had bills due in 6 days. Her mother's medication cost more than her rent. This job, this exact job at this exact restaurant, was the only thing standing between her family and disaster. She thought about walking away. Some part of her, the tired part, the part that hadn't slept more than 5 hours a night in months, wanted to set the tray down and walk straight out the front door. But she thought of her mother, asleep on the couch at home because sitting up too long left her short of breath. She thought of the pharmacy bill sitting unopened on the kitchen counter. She couldn't afford pride tonight. She could only afford to keep her job. So she swallowed the shame rising in her throat and said, "I'll get the manager right away, sir." She turned to walk away. That's when he saw it. A small silver necklace, resting just above the collar of her white blouse. A tiny engraved heart pendant, catching the glow of the candlelight. His face changed. The anger drained out of it in an instant, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. "Wait," he said, his voice completely different now. Quiet, unsteady. "Where did you get that necklace?" Emily turned back, confused. "Excuse me?" "The necklace," he said again, standing up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "Where did you get it?" The whole restaurant was still watching. Only now, nobody understood what they were watching anymore. Emily's hand instinctively rose to touch the pendant at her throat. The one she never took off. The one that had been hers since she was 12 years old. "It was my father's gift to me," she said carefully. "Why does that matter to you?" The man didn't answer. He just stared at the necklace like he had seen a ghost. And somewhere in that frozen silence, in that restaurant full of strangers, something began that neither of them could stop. To understand what happened next, you have to go back. Back before the wine glass. Back before the pointed finger. Back to a little girl standing at a funeral she was too young to fully understand. Emily was 12 when her father, Daniel Hale, was buried with full military honors. She remembered the folded flag more than she remembered the words spoken that day. She remembered her mother's hands shaking as she held it. Daniel had been a staff sergeant, the kind of man who gave his last sandwich to a hungry stranger without thinking twice. He wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. But everyone who served with him said the same thing at his memorial. He was the reason some of them made it home. The night before he shipped out on what would be his final deployment, he sat on the edge of Emily's bed and placed a small silver necklace in her palm. "This isn't just jewelry," he told her. "It's a promise. Wherever you go, however hard things get, you'll never really be alone. I'll always be right here." He tapped the pendant gently against her chest, right over her heart. 2 months later, he was gone. Emily remembered the knock on the door more than she remembered the words the officer said. She remembered her mother sinking to the kitchen floor, and how she, at 12 years old, was the one who had to hold her mother up instead of the other way around. Grief has a strange way of aging a child fast. Emily learned that lesson before she'd even finished middle school. Emily's mother worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Emily grew up fast, learned to stretch a grocery budget, learned to smile through exhaustion. She babysat neighborhood kids on weekends, tutored classmates for a little extra cash, and never once complained, because complaining felt like betraying the sacrifice her father had made. When her mother's health began to fail years later, first her heart, then her lungs, Emily didn't hesitate. She dropped out of a community college nursing program she loved, the one class that made her feel like she had a future beyond survival, and took on the waitressing job to help cover what insurance wouldn't. She told herself it was temporary. Temporary turned into 2 years, then 3. She never took the necklace off. Not once. Not for 12 years. Not when she showered, not when she slept, not even the night she cried herself to sleep after failing to make rent for the first time. It was the one thing in her life that felt untouched by all the hardship that came after her father died. A small, quiet piece of him that no bill collector, no landlord, no rude customer could ever take from her. She had no idea that the man standing in front of her, the one who had just humiliated her over a plate of salmon, had spent those same 12 years haunted by a memory involving a necklace exactly like hers. Back in the present, the restaurant had gone completely silent. Somewhere near the bar, a woman quietly lifted her phone and started recording, sensing that something bigger than a bad customer complaint was unfolding. "I need you to answer me honestly," the man said, his voice barely above a whisper now. "Was your father in the military?" Emily's chest tightened. "Yes. Army. He died when I was 12. The man's face went pale. "What was his name?" Emily hesitated. Something about the way he asked made her stomach drop. "Daniel. Daniel Hale." The man staggered back half a step, gripping the edge of the table to steady himself. For a moment, he looked like he might collapse right there on the restaurant floor. "That's not possible," he whispered. "Sir, you're scaring me," Emily said. "Who are you?" He looked up at her, and for the first time since he'd walked into the restaurant that night, his eyes weren't filled with arrogance or impatience. They were filled with 12 years of guilt. "My name is Marcus Bennett," he said, "and your father saved my life. If you're still with me right now, and you believe that kindness, courage, and hope still exist in this world even when it's hard to see them, take a second to hit like and subscribe. Because what you're about to hear next is the reason this story needed to be told." Marcus sat back down slowly, like his legs had forgotten how to hold him up. Emily stood frozen, the tray still balanced in one hand, forgetting entirely about the manager she was supposed to be fetching. "I need to tell you something," Marcus said, "and I need you to let me finish, even if it's hard to hear." Emily nodded, unable to speak. 14 years ago, I was a lieutenant. Young. Cocky. I thought I knew everything. He let out a shaky breath. We were on a routine convoy when things went wrong. An explosion hit the vehicle 2 ahead of mine. Then ours got hit too. His hands were trembling now, the same hands that minutes ago had pointed at Emily in anger. I was pinned under debris. Fire was spreading fast. I remember thinking, this is it, this is how it ends. The smoke was so thick I couldn't see my own hands in front of my face. I could hear men screaming, metal groaning, and somewhere underneath all of it, I could hear myself praying for the first time since I was a kid. And then I heard someone yelling my name through the smoke. Emily's eyes filled with tears, though she didn't yet understand why. A staff sergeant pulled me out, dragged me nearly 40 yards on his back while rounds were still coming in. He got me to safety. Then he went back. Marcus paused, his voice cracking. He went back for 2 more of our guys. That's when the second explosion hit. The restaurant was dead silent. Nobody was eating anymore. Nobody was pretending not to listen. I woke up in a field hospital 3 days later, Marcus continued. They told me the sergeant who pulled me out didn't make it. I asked for his name so I could find his family one day. Thank them. Tell them what he did. He looked directly at Emily now. They told me his name was Daniel Hale. Emily's tray slipped from her fingers, clattered to the floor, but nobody moved to pick it up. Nobody even flinched at the sound. Before he pulled me out, Marcus said, he pressed something into my hand, told me if anything happened to him, I needed to find his daughter and give it to her. I was unconscious for most of the recovery. When I woke up, it was gone. Lost somewhere between the field hospital and 3 different medical transports. I spent years searching military records trying to find a Hale family. I never found anything. I thought I'd lost my only chance to keep my promise. Emily could barely breathe. What was it? What did he give you? Marcus reached into his jacket pocket with shaking hands. He pulled out a small, worn velvet pouch, the kind that looked like it had been carried and recarried for over a decade. He opened it and tipped it into his palm. Inside was a tiny silver key, no bigger than a fingernail, threaded onto a thin chain. Emily's breath caught in her throat, because the pendant hanging from her own necklace, the one her father had given her the night before he shipped out, had a small, matching keyhole engraved on the back. One she'd never understood the purpose of. One she had simply assumed was decoration. But this story isn't over yet, because what's inside that pendant, what Daniel Hale hid there 14 years ago, is about to change everything Emily thought she knew about her father. And the truth is far bigger than anyone in that restaurant expected. Marcus stood up and walked around the table, his legs unsteady, his eyes locked on the necklace at Emily's throat. "May I?" he asked quietly. "I think that key might open something on your pendant." Emily's hands shook as she unclasped the necklace and handed it to him. The entire restaurant leaned in, forgetting every plate of food in front of them. Marcus turned the pendant over. On the back, barely visible unless you were looking for it, was a tiny seam. He slid the small key into it. Clicked. The back of the heart pendant popped open like a locket, revealing a tightly folded slip of paper no bigger than a postage stamp, yellowed slightly with age. Marcus's hands were shaking too hard to unfold it. "Can't," he whispered. "This is yours. It should be you." He placed the pendant gently in Emily's palm. With trembling fingers, she unfolded the tiny paper. Her father's handwriting, small and careful, filled every inch of it. She read it silently first, her lips moving without sound, tears sliding freely down her cheeks now. Then, because the whole restaurant was holding its breath, she read it out loud. "My sweet Emily, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it home, and I need you to know something important. There's a life insurance policy and a savings bond under both our names, set up the year you were born, held at Fifth Union Trust under my full name. I never told your mother because I didn't want her to worry about money instead of missing me the right way. It's not much, but it's enough to get you through school if you need it. Use it. Don't let pride stop you. I love you more than anything in this world. Take care of your mother. And know that wherever I am, I'm still right here, over your heart, just like I promised." Emily could barely finish the last sentence through her tears. For 12 years, her mother had worked herself to exhaustion, believing there was nothing left behind. For 12 years, Emily had taken extra shifts and skipped meals to help cover medical bills, never knowing there was a piece of her father's love waiting untouched in a bank 3 miles from the restaurant she was standing in right now. Marcus lowered himself into the chair across from her, his earlier arrogance completely gone, replaced by something raw and human. "I have spent 14 years feeling like I failed him," he said. "Like the one thing he asked of me I couldn't do. I built a company. I made more money than I ever thought possible. I bought houses, cars, things I thought would finally make the guilt go away. None of it ever felt like enough because I still owed a debt I couldn't pay. Every promotion, every deal I closed, there was always this voice in the back of my head asking what right I had to any of it, when the man who earned me my life never got to see his own daughter grow up." He rubbed a hand over his face, and for a moment he looked less like a wealthy executive and more like a tired, haunted young soldier who had never fully come home. "I became someone I didn't like," he admitted, "impatient, short-tempered, quick to snap at people who didn't deserve it. I told myself it was stress, the pressure of running a company. But the truth is, I think some part of me was still angry that I lived and he didn't. And I took that anger out on people who had nothing to do with it. People like you tonight." He looked up at her, his eyes red. "Tonight, I walked in here angry about a business deal that fell through. I took it out on you over a plate of salmon. I was cruel to the daughter of the man who died saving my life, and I didn't even know it. That's not a coincidence I can just walk away from." Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "You didn't know. That doesn't make it right," Marcus said firmly. "You deserved better tonight, and you've deserved better for 12 years. He turned to the small crowd that had gathered, silent, moved, some quietly crying at nearby tables. "This young woman's father," he said, His voice carrying now, steady and clear, was the bravest man I have ever known. He gave his life so three of us could go home to our families. I am standing here today, breathing, walking, running a company, raising my own children, because Staff Sergeant Daniel Hale chose to go back into a burning vehicle instead of saving himself. He turned back to Emily. I don't say this to make a scene. I say it because you deserve to hear it from someone who was actually there. The restaurant manager, who had rushed over the moment the tray hit the floor, stood frozen near the kitchen doorway, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch history happen in front of him. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table toward Emily. I own a foundation that supports military families, he said. I started it years ago because I never knew who to help. I was looking for a family I couldn't find. I think I just found them. Emily stared at the card, then at him. I don't need charity, she said quietly, but not unkindly. I just need people to treat my father's memory with respect. Marcus nodded slowly. That's not charity. That's a debt. And I intend to pay it, whether it takes $1 or 100,000. Whatever it takes to make sure his daughter never has to work herself into the ground the way you clearly have been. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then Marcus stood, straightened his jacket, and looked around at the restaurant full of strangers who had just witnessed something none of them would ever forget. I owe this young woman an apology, he said. Not because of who her father was, because of who she is. She kept her composure with more grace tonight than I've shown in years running a company worth more money than I know what to do with. He turned back to Emily. I'm sorry, truly, for tonight, and for every night you had to carry more than you should have carried alone. Emily nodded, tears still falling, but something in her posture had changed. The exhaustion that had been etched into her face for years seemed, for just a moment, a little lighter. Emily didn't sleep at all that night. She sat at her small kitchen table until sunrise, the folded note spread out in front of her, reading it over and over until the words felt permanent, until she was certain she hadn't imagined the whole evening. Her mother sat across from her in her robe, tears sliding silently down her face as Emily read the letter out loud for the third time. He never told me, her mother whispered. All these years, and he never told me. He didn't want you worrying about money instead of missing him, Emily said gently, echoing the words from the note. He wanted you to just grieve him, not manage him. Her mother laughed through her tears, a small broken sound. That sounds exactly like your father. Always trying to protect me from one more thing. 3 weeks later, Emily stood outside Fifth Union Trust with her mother beside her, both of them holding hands as they walked through the front doors together. The savings bond her father had set up 16 years earlier had grown into more than either of them ever imagined. Enough to finally clear her mother's medical debt. Enough for Emily to enroll in the nursing program she had quietly dreamed about since she was a teenager, back when she used to sit beside hospital beds holding her mother's hand and thinking, someday, I want to be the one who helps. Marcus kept his word too. Not with a single check meant to ease his own guilt, but with something steadier. A scholarship established in Daniel Hale's name, awarded every year to a military child pursuing higher education. The first recipient was Emily herself. He visited the restaurant one more time months later, not as an angry customer, but as a quiet guest who left an enormous tip and a simple note. Thank you for reminding me who I want to be. Emily still wears the necklace every single day. The pendant still opens with the tiny silver key, though the note inside has long since been moved somewhere safe. In its place now sits a small photograph, her father in his uniform, smiling the way he always did before he left. She still tells people, when they ask about the necklace, that it was a promise her father made her. Wherever you go, however hard things get, you'll never really be alone. She believes it more now than ever, because sometimes the smallest act of love, hidden away and waiting quietly for years, finds its way back to the people who need it most, exactly when they need it most. And sometimes, the man who humiliates you in front of a room full of strangers turns out to be the one person alive who can finally give you back everything you thought you'd lost. If this story moved you even a little, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness always finds its way home. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, subscribe for more. because there are so many more waiting to be shared.